Guess who's back? Back again. Expert Books Recommendations, Volume 3. Good? Hi, I'm Marcus, and I'm the idiot on the writer's block. If you're new to the channel, I, the idiot, ask experts for tips on how to write, publish, and promote my first fiction novel, Atticus the Mighty. Previous videos include Expert Book Recommendations Volume 1, Expert Book Recommendations Volume 2, and many other questions such as how do you write a great start, how do you write a great protagonist, how do you write a great antagonist, and many more. You can check this playlist for links to all of those videos. Now, for the third installment of our Expert Book Recommendations, I reached out to John McKay, the author of The Girl's Guide to the Apocalypse, as well as two of my favorite literary agents, Kortney Price and Peterson. And here are some of the books that they recommended that I read.
Okay, there's some excellent writers out there that just hasn't hit the big time yet. You can look at Julie Stanley. She goes under J.V.V. Stanley. She writes horror fiction. Now, not really my genre, scared too easily for that, but she's a brilliant writer. You can look at a great and upcoming writer, R.R. Virdi, V-I-R-D-I. The guy writes fantasy like you would not believe. The man, and he's one of those, always call him a Jedi. He's one of those great people that you meet along the way that guides you, that's always got time for you for a kind word. He's probably the nicest person I've ever met in my life. You can also look at Justin Osborne. He's also a great writer. And E.A. Copen. That woman is doing amazing work. She just needs to hit the big time. So we always try to help her and the others out just to hit that next level. These are the writers that I take inspiration from. Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to apologize in advance because of the fact that I'm awful with names and I'm awful with titles. So, don't mind me. I will probably say book titles and not know who the author is. And I'm a mess. Well Met is an adult romance and it's amazing and it's wonderful and you definitely want to read it. Okay. I want to say things that have been published recently. Oh my gosh, Susan Dennard is an amazing example. So Truth Witch, and that entire series is amazing. You should definitely check it out. She's a phenomenal writer. And if you're looking for like character arc and honest to goodness, tension building and things like that, she's amazing at it. I love her dearly. And if you ever want writing advice, her website is also filled with them. So I've been reading a lot of, older young adult fantasy. So Leigh Bardugo is also a go-to as well. And I've already said Laini Taylor. I love Laini Taylor tremendously. So a lot of people will say her newer stuff is a little more purple prose. So I highly recommend Daughter of Smoke and Bone there. Lauren Gabaldi, there it is. Lauren Gabaldi is also a phenomenal author. I fell in love with her one book for contemporary. So she's a great contemporary writer for a young adult. I fell in love with her one book called The Night We Said Yes. And it's amazing. And the emotional capacity there is beautiful. And she's a phenomenal writer. And Eric Smith and I, often will go back and forth about her books every once in a while because I know he fangirls over her the same way that I do. So every time he fangirls, I'm secretly celebrating in my head, right? So she's a wonderful contemporary YA author. So I highly recommend her as well. Yeah, and like I said, middle grade is really tough for me. So I won't say too much as far as that's concerned. But yeah, I'm sure you can probably see the Percy Jackson series here. And I will tell you a secret that I never actually got through it. So if it's a little bit more Percy Jackson related, it might not be my style, but yeah, they're all there.
Yeah. So I work with graphic novel as well. So I just grabbed a bunch of books that I really enjoy. So The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang is one of my favorite graphic novels, of all time. I adore this book, and it comes back to, creating the bridges, that we were talking about. So that one's one. this is going to be forever the book that got away from me. This is House of Salt and Sorrows by Aaron Craig. This is a YA fairy tale retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses, it's so beautifully atmospheric. So if you're looking for like a gothic atmospheric feel, that's something I would definitely recommend checking out. We already talked about Fantastic Land. I'll talk about Fantastic Land forever. That book came out several years ago, and I actually got to read it as an intern. And so it was one of the first books I ever read that got, published and got a really good deal. And I was reading it and I was like, guys, you have to read this. This is so good. And people would look at me like I was crazy because who wants to read that? And I was like, oh, you don't understand. But that one's a really good one if you want to, it takes a journalistic point of view. So every chapter is from a different perspective. And if you want to learn about voice, read that book, because every single chapter is told from a different character who experienced the same event. And every single character has a very specific voice in a very cool way, like a different way of looking at the event in the world. And I mean, it all boils down to the decency of humanity and what we're capable of and things like that, which is kind of predictable, but from a craft perspective, that book is really, really solid. If you want to look at mystery, The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin is a classic, in my opinion, an absolute classic. Pictures of Hollis Woods is a middle grade contemporary that just destroys you and then puts you back together, and I love it. Hatchet by Gary Paulson, I feel like that just has to be on every list everywhere. And then literally anything by Lois Duncan. If you want to look at thriller and the way thriller is set up, Lois Duncan, you can't go wrong with Lois Duncan. She's one of my favorite authors, and it's really interesting because I was talking about, this is Ransom, is the book I have with me, and I was talking about it. I read it when I was in 7th grade or something like that, and I was talking about it, and I was so excited because I'd found it was a whole new genre for me. I'd never read anything in that genre before. And my aunt was just like, wait a minute, what is that called? What was the author? And she had read it when she was in middle school. And my aunt is 30 years older than me. And so, this book, Lois, her books just have transcended that, that time. And they are very much a product of when they were written. I think bell bottoms are actually referenced in one of them, but it's one of those things where she wrote I Know What You Did Last Summer, and that movie, she hated the movie. She absolutely hated the movie because it turned it into something more gory horror type story, whereas hers was more psychological thriller, because it was about each individual and how they're dealing with the accident, hit and run that happened. So those are some of my favorites. Of course, I'm always going to say my authors, none of them have published work out as of yet, but keep an eye out because they're coming. They're coming. They're right on the edge. We're very close on a lot of them, and so keep an eye out for all of those guys.
And there you have it. We're at the end of Expert Book Recommendations Volume 3. Thank you to Kortney Price, Kelly Peterson, and author John McKay. You can see links to their work in the description below. But what did you think of their recommendations? Did you agree or disagree? Put your opinions in the comments to this video. And if you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel to get more expert tips on how to write, publish, and promote your fiction novel. I'm Marcus, and I'll see you for Volume 4.